Welcome back to DT101. This is Lecture 3, Define, Framing the Right Problem. If empathize was about going out into the world and filling up on raw material, observations, stories, contradictions, then define is where you make sense of all of it. And that's harder than it sounds. By the end of today you'll know how to move from a pile of sticky notes and field observations to a sharp, focused problem statement that can actually guide creative work. We'll cover synthesis, affinity mapping, point of view statements, and the crucial how might we question. Here's where we are. Lecture 1 gave us the big picture, the 5 stages and why the process is iterative. Lecture 2 was entirely about empathize, how to go out and truly understand your user. Now in Lecture 3, we take everything we gathered and turn it into direction. A lot of teams skip this step. They come back from interviews, look at their notes, and think, right, I understand the situation, let's start designing. And then they wonder why their ideas feel scattered and unfocused. Define is the bridge that makes ideate work. Don't underestimate it. Here's the uncomfortable truth, the most common design mistake isn't a bad idea, it's a bad problem statement. Or no problem statement at all. Most people are solution-oriented. It's how we're trained. Something is broken, fix it. Someone complains, add a feature. But when you rush to a solution before you've defined the problem precisely, you're throwing ideas at a target you haven't actually aimed at. Some might hit. Most won't. There's a second failure mode, the problem is too vague to give your team traction. Improve the user experience sounds like a problem statement. It isn't, you can go in 1,000 directions from there. What a good define phase does is create a creative constraint. A sharp problem statement narrows the solution space just enough to make ideation productive, not so small that you've already found the answer, not so large that you have nowhere to stand. After empathy work, you have a lot of raw material. Notes, quotes, observations, maybe recordings. And the natural impulse is to start seeing patterns immediately. Resist that. Synthesis has 4 deliberate steps. First, gather everything, every observation, every quote, in one place. Second, cluster, look for things that echo each other across different users or different contexts. Third, and this is the key move, identify the core tension, the underlying conflict or unmet need that keeps appearing. And fourth, frame it as a challenge, a statement that captures that tension and points toward design opportunity. Each step matters on its own. Jumping from gather to frame is like trying to see the picture in a puzzle before you've sorted the pieces. The most common synthesis tool is affinity mapping, and it's beautifully low-tech. You write one observation per sticky note, not a summary of your whole interview, not a theme, one specific thing you saw or heard, and put them all on a wall. Then you group them. Don't predefine categories. Let groupings emerge from the data. And when you name a cluster, don't name it by topic. Don't write navigation issues. Write an insight statement. Users don't trust the digital interface in the field. The checkout process creates anxiety, not confidence. The naming is where the insight lives. The groupings that surprise you are often the ones that reveal the real problem. An observation is something you saw or heard. A user prints the confirmation screen and carries the paper around with them. That's an observation. The insight is the interpretation, what that behavior reveals. The digital interface isn't trusted in the field. Another example. A user triple checks their confirmation email after completing a purchase. Observation. The insight, the checkout flow creates anxiety rather than confidence. Or this one, a staff member keeps a notebook open on the desk alongside the software they're officially supposed to use. Insight, the tool doesn't match how they actually think. The observation is neutral, it just describes what happened. The insight is a claim about why. Insights don't come for free. You have to earn them by sitting with your observations long enough to ask, what does this really mean? Once you have your insights, you're ready to write a point of view, or POV, statement. The format is simple, user, needs, need, because, insight. Each part does specific work. The user grounds you, you're not designing for everyone, you're designing for a specific person in a specific situation. The need describes what they're actually missing, not a feature, not a technical requirement, a genuine human need. And the because is where the insight anchors the whole thing. It connects the need to something real you discovered in your research. If you can't fill in that clause with a real insight, go back to your data. Without it, you have a guess, not a finding. Elderly users need simpler technology. Weak. It's generic. It contains no real insight. You could generate 5 wildly different design directions from that statement, and none of them would be grounded in anything you actually learned. Students need a faster registration system. Also weak, and in a subtler way. It's already a solution dressed up as a need. Faster is a design decision. You've skipped the actual human experience and jumped to a prescription. Now here's a strong one. A first-year student needs to feel confident navigating enrollment because unfamiliar systems create anxiety that stops them from asking for help. That has a specific person, a genuine human need, not speed, not simplicity, but confidence, and an insight that explains why the need exists. And importantly, it doesn't prescribe the solution. A dozen different teams could write a dozen genuinely different approaches from that single statement. The final step in define is converting your POV into a how might we question, HMW for short. It's a small linguistic move with a surprisingly large effect. When you say users need X, it still feels like a problem to be solved. When you say how might we help users achieve X, it becomes an invitation. The phrasing signals that a solution is possible, and implies there are probably many of them. Might suggests possibility without commitment. We makes it a shared challenge. From a single strong POV you should be able to generate 5 to 10 different HMW questions. How might we reduce anxiety during enrollment? How might we make it easier for students to ask for help without feeling embarrassed? Then choose the one that opens the widest useful solution space. Scope is everything with HMW questions. Get it wrong in either direction and your ideation will suffer. Too broad. How might we improve education? That's a life's work, not a design challenge. There's no useful traction there. Too narrow. How might we add a calendar feature to the registration portal? You've answered the question inside the question, you're reverse engineering a justification for something already decided. Just right. How might we help first-year students feel less alone during enrollment? That's specific enough to point somewhere, but open enough that genuinely different solutions are possible, some of which you probably haven't thought of yet. That's exactly the space you want to stand in when you walk into Ideate. A few patterns to watch for as you do this work with a real team. Too broad, the POV or HMW is so wide that ideation scatters. Too narrow, a solution has been baked into the problem statement. You're not exploring, you're building a justification for something already decided. Missing because, the POV has a user and a need but no insight. It looks complete on the surface, but it has no anchor in real research. This one is dangerous precisely because it's easy to miss. A practical test, take your HMW and ask whether you can honestly imagine 10 genuinely different solutions, not 10 variations on one idea, but 10 different approaches. If you can't, your question is probably too narrow. 3 things to carry forward from today. First, define is not about narrowing your creativity, it's about focusing it. A sharp problem statement gives ideation something to push against, which is what makes it productive. Second, the sequence matters. Affinity mapping surfaces themes. Themes generate insights. Insights anchor your POV. Your POV becomes a how might we question. Each step builds on the last, and skipping any one of them shows up later. Third, a good problem statement guides without prescribing. If your HMW already contains the answer, you haven't done define, you've done pre-design. In Lecture 4, Ideate, we take that HMW and generate solutions. Everything we do there depends on how well you've done this work here. 3 questions to sit with before the next lecture. First, what is the real difference between an observation and an insight? Try to give one example of each from something you've experienced in your own work or daily life. Second, imagine a student who consistently struggles to register for courses online. Draft a POV statement for them. What insight would you put in the because clause? What does their behavior actually reveal about the deeper need? And third, a team writes the HMW, how might we build a better app? What exactly is wrong with it, and how would you rewrite it so it's actually useful? There's more than one thing wrong. See if you can find them all.